That tightness in your chest that knocked you down yesterday afternoon, without warning, without apparent reason, the conversation that turned into a fight out of nowhere, the exhaustion that descended upon you like lead even after a full night's sleep. You thought it was a coincidence. It was not. It was calculated sabotage. Someone is in absolute panic because you are exactly 72 hours away from catching the signal you asked for in secret. Heaven has already answered. The response is already vibrating around you. But there is a deliberate blockage between you and this divine frequency, and if you do not understand what is happening now, you will spend another 6 months praying for the same thing that has already been released. The problem is not God's delay. The problem is that your spiritual antenna is turned off, and today you are going to learn how to turn it back on. I'm going to show you something that Brazilian science has just validated, and that will completely change the way you understand prayer, discernment, and spiritual warfare. The University of São Paulo recently published a study on brain waves and states of consciousness that explains in physical, measurable terms why some people catch divine direction with clarity, while others spend years in the desert asking for signals that never arrive. The difference is not in faith, it is in the frequency. Your brain was designed to operate in 4 main bands of electrical waves: beta, alpha, theta, and delta. Each one puts you in a completely different mental state. Beta is the frequency of anxiety, stress, and survival. It is where you spend 90% of your day. Theta is the frequency of deep intuition, of the still, small voice, of spiritual downloads. It is where the prophets have always operated. The modern world has hijacked your brain and locked you in beta. And as long as you are trapped in this noisy frequency, you can pray as much as you want, fast for entire weeks, and the divine signal will pass right by you like a radio out of tune. Now pay attention to this, because here is the part no one told you. There is an invisible pattern repeating in your life over the last 72 hours, exactly 3 days. You asked for something specific in prayer. It might have been in the early hours of the morning, it might have been in the car, in a moment of silent desperation. You cried out for an answer, for a clear sign, for a door to open. And heaven heard. The answer was released. But since that moment, everything began to crumble around you in strange, small, irritating ways. Arguments that make no sense, physical pains without a diagnosis, a mental fog that prevents you from thinking clearly. This is not bad luck. It is a strategic blockage. The enemy cannot stop God from answering, but he can block your ability to perceive the answer. He can create interference. And the interference he uses is always the same: high stress, chronic anxiety, constant mental noise. All of this keeps you trapped in the beta frequency, far from the theta, where the voice of God is audible. If you feel that this message is exactly for you, that every word is touching something very specific in your journey, do not let this video pass. Subscribe now to this channel, because what comes next will equip you with a practical tool, validated by neuroscience and confirmed by the Word, which can recalibrate your spiritual tuning in less than a week. But you must first understand what is being locked inside of you. There is a Hebrew word that appears 301 times in the Old Testament, and that carries the key to all of this: Shama. Shin, Mem, Ayin. The most common translation is to hear, but the original meaning goes much deeper. Shama does not just mean perceiving a sound with the ears. It means to tune in completely, to calibrate oneself to the same frequency, to absorb until it becomes part of you. When Moses says, "Shema Israel," "Hear, O Israel," he is not asking for superficial attention. He is summoning a frequency alignment. Place yourself in the same vibration as the Eternal. Adjust your antenna. Recalibrate. The problem of the modern generation is not that God stopped speaking. It is that we stopped Shama. We lost the ability to tune in, and there is a physical, literal explanation for this inside your skull. The Brain Institute of the PUC of Rio Grande do Sul mapped exactly what happens in the brain of a person subjected to chronic stress. Beta waves, which should be used only in moments of real alert, of imminent danger, become the dominant pattern. Your brain gets stuck in fight or flight mode, 24 hours a day. This completely closes access to theta waves, which are generated in a specific region called the hippocampus, the same area responsible for deep memory and intuition. When you are in constant beta, the hippocampus is suppressed. The silent voice cannot emerge. You continue praying, crying out, interceding, but it is like shouting inside a hurricane. The sound goes out, but you cannot hear the answer, and it gets worse. The enemy knows this mechanism. He does not need to possess you or attack you with something spectacular. He just needs to keep you stressed, anxious, overwhelmed. As long as you are in beta, he has neutralized you. Let me show you this in the Bible in a way you have never seen. Daniel chapter 10, verse 12. The angel Gabriel appears to Daniel and says something disturbing. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Pay attention. Daniel prayed. God heard immediately. The answer was sent on the same day. But there was a 21-day blockage between the answer released in heaven and the answer received by Daniel on earth. This interval was not empty. It was war. It was active sabotage. The Prince of Persia, a high-ranking spiritual entity, created a barrier to prevent the message from arriving. Daniel was not doing anything wrong. He was fasting, praying, seeking. But there was interference. And while that interference lasted, Daniel experienced exactly what you are experiencing now: confusion, inexplicable tiredness, a feeling that heaven was silent. But heaven was not silent. It was at war. Now I need you to stop and think. How many times have you prayed for something, waited days, weeks, months, and gave up believing that God had said no, when in fact the answer was being blocked on the way? How many doors did you fail to walk through because exhaustion defeated you 3 days before the manifestation? The 72-hour pattern is not random. It is the time the enemy uses to create a siege around a divine response about to materialize. 3 days. The same period Jesus stayed in the tomb. The same time Jonah stayed in the belly of the fish. 3 days of crossing between death and resurrection, between chaos and order, between silence and the voice. And you are now in that interval. The answer has already been released. But you need to cross the fog. If this is making absolute sense to you, if every sentence is confirming something you have been feeling but could not name, I want you to do something now. Like this video. This simple gesture creates a marker in the algorithm, and heaven uses even that to connect this message with other people who are in the same battle frequency as you. Do not underestimate anything. Everything is strategic. So how do we get out of beta and into theta? How do you recalibrate the spiritual antenna when the whole world was designed to keep you out of tune? The answer lies in a sacred technology that the ancients knew and that modern science has rediscovered, albeit reluctantly. There is a study from the HeartMath Institute in the United States, replicated by Unifesp here in Brazil, that measured the brain activity of people in deep contemplative prayer. Not mechanical, repetitive prayer, but that prayer where you silence yourself completely, empty your mind of words, and simply place yourself before the presence. What they discovered was shocking. In less than 7 minutes, the brains of these people completely changed frequency. They left the agitated beta and entered a band called deep theta, between 4 and 7 hertz. In this band, the hippocampus is activated. Intuition fires. The silent voice, the one Elijah heard in the cave after the earthquake and the fire, becomes audible. It is not mysticism. It is physics. God created your brain with a built-in recalibration key. But you need to press the button. Elijah was broken, running from Jezebel, wanting to die. He had just witnessed the greatest miracle of his life on Mount Carmel, fire descending from heaven, the prophets of Baal destroyed, and yet he fell into deep depression. Why? Because he was operating in beta, survival mode, adrenaline, constant struggle. He needed a reset, and God did not shout at him. He did not bring another spectacular miracle. God took him to a cave and said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord." And then came wind, earthquake, fire, but God was in none of those. God was in the still small voice that came after. The Hebrew phrase there is demama daka, a whispering silence, pure theta. Elijah had to get out of the noise, the spectacle, the adrenaline, and enter the frequency where God always speaks. And when he entered, everything changed. The mission was reactivated, the purpose was restored, the anointing was confirmed. You were created to operate in theta. Not all the time, because you need beta for practical tasks, to solve problems, to act in the physical world. But you need to access theta every day, even if only for 7 minutes, or you will live spiritually deaf. And here is the part that religion hates to hear. It is no use praying for 2 hours in beta. Prayer in beta is verbalized anxiety. It is a list of requests shouted at the ceiling. There is no connection. 7 minutes in theta are worth more than 7 hours in beta. Because in theta, you stop talking and start listening. And listening, Shama, is what unlocks everything. Now comes the enemy's final blow. At the exact moment you decide to do this, the moment you commit to creating these 7 daily minutes of recalibrating silence, the attacks will intensify. Not decrease. Intensify. Paul of Tarsus knew this. 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He speaks of a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan sent to buffet him. The Greek word there is kolaphizo, to punch repeatedly, constant attack. And when was this thorn driven in? Exactly after Paul had the highest revelation of his life. He was caught up to the third heaven, heard inexpressible words, received downloads that no human being had ever received. And in the next moment, the thorn. Why? Because the enemy ignores you when you are broken, lost, wandering in the desert. But when you pick up the bricks to rebuild the temple, when you put your hand on the recalibration tool, he mobilizes everything against you. Tempting financial opportunities will appear to divert you. Toxic relationships will resurface out of nowhere. Theological doubts you never had before, all at the same time. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are doing something right. And I want you to do something prophetic now. Go to the comments section and write just one word, in capital letters, tuning. Do not explain. Do not justify. Just declare. This word is a milestone. It is you communicating to heaven and earth that you understood the message, that you are adjusting the frequency, that you will no longer accept living spiritually deaf. And when you do that, something moves. It is not superstition. It is alignment. The spoken word, or in this case the typed word, has weight in the spiritual world. Go ahead. Tuning. All in capitals. There is another Hebrew word I need to show you before I give you the practical technique. Kava. Kof, vav, hey. It is translated as wait, as in Isaiah 40. Those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. But kava does not mean waiting passively, sitting down, crossing your arms until something falls from the sky. Kava comes from a root that means to twist, to intertwine, to connect. It was used to describe the act of weaving ropes, of joining strands until they form a strong cable. Waiting on God, in the Hebrew sense, is to connect actively. It is to intertwine your frequency with His frequency. It is to create a transmission cable. And do you know where this intertwining happens? In the silence, in theta, when you stop pushing, forcing, shouting, and simply connect. The Getulio Vargas Foundation released a recent survey showing that 86% of Brazilians over 35 report symptoms of chronic anxiety. 86%. This is not an epidemic. It is a collective hijacking. It is an entire generation trapped in beta, incapable of kava, incapable of connecting, living on the wrong frequency. Here is the technique. It is not complicated. It requires nothing more than 7 minutes and silence. You will choose a fixed time. It can be early in the morning before the chaos of the day begins. It can be at night after the house goes silent. The time matters less than the consistency. Same time every day you will sit in a comfortable but upright posture. Straight spine, feet on the ground, hands open on your thighs, palms up. This is not yoga. This is spiritual anatomy. Palms up is a posture of receptivity. You will close your eyes and begin to breathe in a controlled manner. Inhale counting to 4, hold counting to 4, exhale counting to 6. The exhalation being longer than the inhalation is what activates the parasympathetic nervous system and drops the beta waves. This is documented. You do this for 2 minutes until you feel your whole body slow down. Afterward, you stop counting and simply observe your breath. Do not try to control it. Just observe. Air coming in, air going out. And whenever a thought appears, and they will appear in droves, you do not fight them. You just acknowledge, a thought, and let it pass. Do not follow it. Do not develop it. Let it pass like a cloud. You will do this for the next 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, without you realizing it, your brain will begin to produce theta waves. The hippocampus will wake up, intuition will surface. And in the end, you will not walk out of there with an audible voice, giving you step-by-step instructions. It might happen, but most of the time it is more subtle. You will leave with clarity, with inexplicable peace, with an internal certainty of what the next step is. This is Shama, this is restored tuning. Now comes the critical part. You must do this for at least 7 consecutive days. Do not skip a day. Do not negotiate. 7 days. Why? Because 72 hours is the time of the blockage. 7 days is the time of reconstruction. It is the time God took to create everything. It is the time Joshua marched around Jericho before the walls fell. 7 days recalibrating your brain frequency will dismantle blockages that have been active for years. But if you skip a day, the pattern breaks and you have to start over. The enemy knows this. He will do everything to sabotage you precisely on the 4th or 5th day, when you are almost breaking through. He will invent an emergency. He will bring uncontrollable sleepiness. He will have someone call you right at that time. You must treat these 7 minutes as non-negotiable. More important than any meeting, any call, any commitment, because they are. There is a technical detail that the neuroscience people from Sao Paulo highlighted that is brutal. When you enter theta, the brain releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine in the hippocampus. This neurotransmitter is responsible for the formation of long-term memories and the consolidation of deep learning. You know those revelations you had years ago that changed everything, but that over time you forgot. They are archived in the hippocampus, and when you return to theta regularly, those spiritual memories are reactivated. You begin to remember promises God made that you had left behind. You begin to relive encounters you had that were buried by the rush of life. Theta does not just bring new revelation, it brings restoration of old revelation. And often, the signal you are asking for now was already given years ago. You just need to access the frequency where the answer is recorded. If you have made it this far and are realizing that this is no longer just a random video, that there is something being orchestrated specifically to take you out of the place where you are stuck, I want you to do one thing. Activate the notification bell now. Because the next video that will come out on this channel will show you exactly what to do in the first 24 hours after you recalibrate your tuning. It will teach you to identify the signs that are already around you, but that you are not seeing. The name of the video is The 3 Signs That Confirm God Has Already Answered and You Didn't Notice. Do not miss it. But there is a warning I need to give you before you leave. Recalibrating the tuning is not the end of the war. It is the beginning of another phase. When you were spiritually deaf, the enemy left you in peace because you represented no danger. You were neutralized. But the moment you recover spiritual hearing, the moment you begin to catch direct divine instructions, you become a threat. And threats are attacked. So prepare yourself. In the first few days after starting this practice, you may feel physical resistance, inexplicable headaches, insomnia, extreme irritability. It is not the technique causing this. It is the kingdom of darkness trying to convince you that you are doing something wrong, that you are heading toward the new age, that you are abandoning orthodoxy. A lie. You are recovering something that was always yours. The Desert Fathers did this. Contemplative monks have done this for centuries. Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, even Ignatius of Loyola developed silence techniques that activate exactly this frequency. This is not a modern invention, it is the rescue of ancient technology. There is a verse that the chickens do not like to quote, but that Paul wrote knowing exactly what he was talking about. Philippians 4, 6 and 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Pay attention to the sequence. Do not be anxious, present your requests, and then and then peace that transcends understanding. But there is a hidden condition there. Peace comes when you stop being anxious. And how do you stop being anxious in a world designed to make you anxious? You change frequency. You leave beta. You enter theta. You access the peace that transcends understanding, because that peace is not emotional. It is frequential. It is literal. It is a vibration of the kingdom that can only be caught when you tune in. I know people who pray 3 hours a day and remain in the same situation for 5 years. I know people who fast every week and see no change. Why? Because they are doing everything in beta. They are fighting, forcing, pushing. And God does not respond to force. He responds to tuning. Isaiah 30:15. In quietness and trust is your strength. The Hebrew word for quietness there is nachat. It means rest, serenity, absence of struggle. It is not laziness, it is positioning. It is you placing yourself on the right frequency and letting heaven operate. But the modern church sold the idea that spirituality is noise, is shouting, is 24-hour effort. It is not. True spirituality is calibration. It is fine-tuning. It is knowing when to fight and when to be silent. Now look at what happens when you put all of this together. You have an answer that was already released 72 hours ago. You have an active spiritual blockage trying to prevent you from perceiving that answer. You have a brain that was hijacked to the wrong frequency. And you have a technique validated by science and confirmed by the word that can recalibrate everything in 7 days. The question that remains is, will you do it, or will you continue praying without hearing? Because God has already spoken. Gabriel has already been dispatched. The answer has already left the throne. But if you do not change the channel, you will spend another 6 months thinking that heaven is silent. And there is one more thing. When you begin to catch it, when the tuning restores, the first instructions you receive may seem strange. They may not make logical sense. They may contradict what the people around you are advising. This is a test. God wants to know if you trust his voice more than the voice of the crowd. Abraham was ordered to leave his land without knowing where he was going. It made no sense. Noah was ordered to build a giant ark in a place where it had never rained. Ridiculous. Moses was ordered to return to Egypt as a wanted fugitive. Suicidal. But they all obeyed the internal frequency. And they all saw supernatural manifestation. You will have to choose. Either you obey what you caught in theta, or you return to the consensus of beta. You cannot serve both. Let me tell you something that happened to me, and that made me understand this irreversibly. I was in a moment of brutal decision. 2 open doors. One made perfect rational sense, the other seemed like madness. I prayed, fasted, asked for advice. Everyone, and I mean everyone, said the rational door was the right one. But I had an internal discomfort, a still voice telling me to choose the other. I tried to ignore it. I went back to praying in beta. I shouted, I cried, I asked for a spectacular confirmation. Nothing. Then I stopped. I was silent. I entered theta without knowing it was theta at the time, and in less than 3 minutes, a clarity came so strong that I could not question it. It was not an audible voice. It was a visceral certainty. I chose the door that seemed like madness. I lost friends. I lost money in the short term. I spent 3 months thinking I had made a mistake. And then the manifestation began. Doors I never imagined. Impossible connections. Supernatural provision. And I understood. The still voice always knows more than the loud voice. You who are watching this now, you did not click here by chance. This video was strategically placed in front of you because there is something about to manifest in your life, and you need to be tuned in to recognize it. It could be an opportunity in disguise. It could be a person who will cross your path in the next few days and who carries a piece of the puzzle. It could be a dream you will have tonight with literal instruction. But if you do not recalibrate now, you will let it pass. And this window does not stay open forever. It has a determined time. 72 hours have already run. You have 96 more hours of margin before the blockage consolidates. 6 days. It is no coincidence that I am giving you a 7-day technique. It is divine synchrony. Share this video now. Send it to that person you know has been praying for the same thing for months and sees no answer. Send it to those who are in the desert thinking, God has vanished. Because the problem is not God vanishing, it is us losing the tuning. And when you share a message that restores tuning, you become part of the transmission network. You become an antenna too, and heaven uses that. Do not underestimate the power of conscious sharing. Before closing, I want you to understand a truth that will free you from so much guilt. If you have been asking for the same thing for months, perhaps years, and thinking that God is ignoring you, stop martyrizing yourself. It is not rejection, it is detuning. And detuning can be corrected. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are not passed over. You are just operating on the wrong frequency. And now you have the tool to fix it. 7 daily minutes, controlled breathing, observational silence, theta, shama, kava, complete recalibration. Do this for 7 consecutive days, and then tell me what happened. Come back here and leave an account in the comments, because these testimonies will serve as fuel for other people who will need evidence that this works. The war is real, the blockage is real, but the sacred technology of recalibration is also real, and it is available. It does not need expensive equipment. It does not need a week-long spiritual retreat. It does not need a guru. It needs you, 7 minutes, and the decision to tune in. The rest is the work of the Spirit. See you in the next video. And remember, tuning. Write it down there. This is more than engagement. It is a declaration. It is you saying that you understood and that you will act. Go.